Okay, how's good evening, friends, family, loved ones, addicts, non-addicts, all our friends in recovery, and everybody that supports and watches us. And to those that don't support and watch us, hopefully our message reaches you sometime, and whatever your opinion is on us changes. Not that we really care about your opinion, but that's fine. I just want to say thank you first this evening to the people that supported me in my recovery. Thank you to God, that God is real, and God came for the sinners, not the saints. If we were all saints, there wouldn't need to be a God, and we all know the story of God, or most of us do. If you don't, maybe it's best you get to know it, and that's what recovery does. So, this evening, I think there's a couple of thank yous, obviously. Thank you to the people that bailed me out. Thank you to the people that gave me an address to stay at when I was bailed out. Thank you for the people that took me in and out of institutions. Not out, but came to come and pick me up at institutions or hospitals or whatever when my time was done. Yeah, so how's it, Sharon? How's it, Dion? Hi, my brother-in-law, Nicholas. How's it, man? Hope everything's good there, your side. It usually is. Some people that's been good examples to me here in my life. That was all around me. But, addiction almost puts those what do you call those things that the horses wear? Puts those things on your eyes, and you see no good around you. You take no one as an example, and you do your own thing. So yeah, thank you to all those people. Thank you to the RAEL organization, especially. You get lots of messages of hope. You get lots of rehabilitation centers, and you get lots of people in recovery that sit in recovery meetings, low down in their chair, claim to be 6 years or plus or whatever sober, and they think that they're better than you if you walk in there with 2 days or 30 days or whatever. But it's their fault. It's their fault in most cases that people go to these support group meetings and they're putting their hand up every 30 days saying, I'm 30 days clean. Then another couple of 30 days down the line, when they ask who's clean and how long you clean because they want to wish you well, yes, blinkers. And sometimes these blinkers take long to fall off because you get a couple of days clean, and then the blinkers come back on, and all they see is themselves and want to glorify themselves and forget where they come from. Forget that they were the addict sitting there putting their hand up for 3 days. So, we like to keep it light-hearted. We like to keep it, sometimes, I wouldn't say funny, but we speak about things that we can laugh about. I don't know why my comments aren't moving up. I actually have to move it up this evening. So how's it to everybody? And like I said, thank you to the people that helped me along the way. The people that took me to institutions, the people that went out of their way, the people that stopped what they were doing for themselves, the people that compromised their home situations to give me a chance. But at that time when they did that, all it done for me was open up the gap for me as a sick person. A person that suffers from the disease of addiction, which some people may not recognize as a disease, but it's an illness that displays itself in ways that are very difficult to detect sometimes. You get people that will be okay for months, and the difference between me and the people that can have a drink on a Saturday night, they need to decide if they're addicts or alcoholics or whatever the case might be, is that I don't stop at the end of Saturday night. Me, I've lost the ability to control any mind-altering or mood-altering substance. Whether it comes from the bottle store, the hardware store, the bottle store, the drug dealer, the pharmacy, whatever makes you high. Once I get that into my system, I lose the ability to stop. But once I've stopped and I've entered recovery and I've been informed correctly by recovering addicts that have been through it, not psychologists and doctors and all this cuck that kept me in my addiction for longer, that didn't work, but the people that's got solid sobriety, like Mr. Hall and another couple of other examples of people that go to the ends of the earth to carry the message to the still suffering addict. Not look down on them in the meetings. I think that is the biggest job. Our biggest tool against addiction at the moment is the recovering addict. That is our biggest tool. That is our biggest need. Because the cops don't do shit. A lot of them are still coming to parents that have phoned, parents, sisters and brothers and loved ones that live in a house that have been through a week of having to hide their purses away. That have been through a week of when you go to your own bedroom or go for a shower, you have to make sure that your purse or your wallet or your jewelry is hidden away. Being held hostage by addiction. And like I say, all the people along the way that really out of their hearts trying to help me was being conned by the disease and the illness of addiction. I think in most cases it was my best intentions to try and make things work when I was given chances. Like I said, I've lived in most provinces of this country. Sometimes for a short period of time. Sometimes for a couple of months at a time. And my favorite province is Cape Town though. You know, and everywhere I stayed, when I wasn't working on my illness, because my illness doesn't need to be with drugs in my system or drugs in my hand. The illness of addiction runs a lot deeper than that. And, you know, we have our light-hearted show where it's called Crackers and Crackheads. But that name comes from what is happening today. You know, we don't always want to have the sort of aggressive approach, but we're dealing with addiction here. I had a conversation with my mom today on the phone, and I'm the only one left out of my circle of friends that I grew up with. My close circle of friends. All of them either hung themselves, God bless them, or overdosed, or died of some kind of illness that was induced by substance abuse. One or two of them maybe in a car accident because of drinking and driving. You know, in one of my highest sort of times of addiction, you know, when I used to use drugs and other people used to get drunk, I used to justify all kinds of things, you know. I used to say things like you never see on the news it says, okay, long distance bus driver high on ecstasy kills 35 in accident. Or you know, I used to justify all these things for my usage. How many lives of people, how's it, Kinzo? Sorry, I'm just seeing the names pop up here very quickly. How many lives are being affected this evening by one person that has a substance abuse problem? And now I'm not talking about every day like me. It doesn't need to be that extreme. It can even be who got abused on the weekend by alcoholic. And that abuse can be coming from a man or a woman, you know what I mean? Because most people get stronger when they drink. Some get disruptive. Some don't deal with their issues properly and it comes out when they drink. But as we say, who is an addict? Who is an addict? An addict isn't a person that goes to the streets at jails, institutions, or needles, jails, institutions, and death, and living on the street. There is different levels of sickness. There is different levels of sickness. And I'm speaking specifically on substance abuse this evening. And again, I'll ask, how many of those people that stood outside the fucking bottle store at 4 o'clock? How many of those people that stood outside the bottle store at 4 o'clock when it opened in the morning, how many of their bills were up to date? How many of them had paid support for their kids? How many of them had paid their school fees? How many of them didn't owe anything on their credit card? How many of them had every single area of their life up to date and running on full steam and wasn't affected by their drinking? So, I think that the disease or illness of addiction is only looked at poverty-stricken areas. It's only looked at where maybe mom and dad has made a life for themselves and the kid is on drugs, holding mom and dad hostage, sitting at home, I almost said skommeling, watching porn, smoking tick. But we don't know what they're doing behind their room doors, do we, mom and dad? You know why? Because they've created and made a place in your house where you have to walk on eggshells to be too scared to ask them what's going on. You need to be too scared to test your own kids today. Drug test them. It's not only in the poverty-stricken areas. It's among normal, everyday people that go to work and back every day, that cover the rent. How many dads or moms or whatever the case might be was laying drunk on the couch, still halfway through Friday night or early hours of Saturday morning? How many families went through just staying out of mom or dad's way because they know what happens when he drinks? Even though it's only on a Friday and Saturday, isn't that enough to mess somebody up mentally and emotionally? Isn't that enough to put somebody else through shit? Addiction, the questions when you ask someone, are you an addict or alcoholic, or you might have a substance abuse problem, is what I'm doing causing any disruption or disharmony in any area of my life or somebody else's life? The people that work hard, that do their thing, that pay their bills, that don't interfere with other people, that have a drink and do their thing, and that's okay, and it ends off okay, sure. Hi, Auntie Beverly. If I'm supposed to phone you, I tell you, between Saturday and early this afternoon, I was lucky to be able to give my mom a call this afternoon, because the phones are off the hook. The phones are off the hook. People have been retrenched. People are getting a closer look, especially through this lockdown, at their kids and what they've been doing and who they really are. We've lost connection with each other as families. We've become the humanity amongst people. Sorry, I don't mean to miss anybody, but my eye just catches the names that here and there that pop up. How's it, Cindy? What's up, Lucy? Clutchy's there. Laura. Our pastor, Katrina. And the drugs are making the oak, so I don't want to say brain dead, but it's heating the oak, so yeah, I tell you, I don't know if there's a reason, or they say a mad person doesn't know that they're mad, but most people say to me that I'm not mad? And maybe there's a reason why the drugs didn't give me brain damage, didn't mess up my organs. So over the years, I suppose I drugged myself over and over, right down to animal level. I'm talking about parents, you know about this. Into tents, into people's garages on dirty mattresses. I lived by Nige, and in Joburg, and the mattress I had was smaller than our dog beds that we had here in our lounge. And for a while, a couple of months, I lived week to week. The place where I was living before, the people got naughty with me. I didn't have much other family in Johannesburg at the time. These people got naughty with me because I started earning nice money. And you know, I felt a little bit victimized when they wanted to continuously put up my rent or trap my juice or take advantage of me, and I wouldn't allow it, even though I was on drugs and paid my rent and all of that. And they had behavior, addict behavior. And you know, I didn't want to stay there anymore and things like that, because to me it felt like I could do better for myself somewhere else where people don't just trap my juice and try and even have a problem with me when I used to send Jordan money and that kind of stuff. And it's supposed to be running a charity, those people at the time. Anyways, I had some good times there. I drank a lot with them and all of that. Drank a lot of their donations that they got at that time out for their charity that they were running. And I was still using. I was using and all of that. And you know, when I used to buy Jordan presents and things like that, then they would ask like, what about their son and all this cuck and whatever. Non-addicts. But anyways, I don't want to get too much into that. But animal level, I lived there by them, and I got to a point, you know, where I didn't have a bank account. I was getting a cash check from my work, and I was getting decent, very decent money in Joburg, very, very decent. And what had happened there, I was living by a Nigerian man that sells drugs, and lots of other people also sell drugs, but you know, Chinese people are known for selling Chinese food, and Chinatown. And yeah, so I went to go, and I was living there by him, and you know, these people had kept my ID, knowing that I got nowhere else to go, no other people, anything like that. I hadn't stolen from them yet at the time. I did go and steal all their stuff afterwards, because they pulled me a dirty and I couldn't cash my check, and I was heart sore that I was using drugs again. And yeah, so they were running sort of a charity there that they were using the money for the wrong reasons at the time. So I thought like, hey, fuck you, I broke into their Wendy house, I stole all their computers and things like that. And I thought that would rather go for a good cause to the you know, the girls that worked on the road for the Nigerian where I was staying, and make their life a bit easier for 1 or 2 nights where I'd buy them drugs and things like that, instead of them having to have to stand on the road. And that was my thinking at the time. But when I say animal level, I would wake up there sometimes in the middle of the night, and one of the ladies that lived there, one of these ladies that sold her body that lived there. I wasn't there for the prostitutes, honestly. When I'm on drugs, prostitutes and chicks is somewhere in the bottom of my list. What makes me an addict, or what makes me believe that it's an illness, is that once I put drugs into my body, every other priority or every other need or every other thought starts slipping further and further and further away from me. And I'm not worried about prostitutes and ladies and girlfriends or children or anything. I'm just on a drug mission or a drinking mission or whatever my mission is. Usually a bit of a cocktail. And at the time. And what happened was I was so enslaved and almost held hostage by my addiction. What would happen there was I would, these people that were running the charity that were using the money for the wrong reasons, it made it a little bit more difficult for them to run charity after I stole all their computers and phones and stuff like that. But anyways, shit happens, you know. And that's the way I used to handle things before. You steal from me, I steal from you. And obviously I got the shit end of the stick in most cases because I'm the addict and whatever. But this is the things that prove to me that addict behavior, so-called addict behavior, isn't only in addicts. And they withheld my ID and they damaged of my property and things like that. And I didn't have a leg to stand on, you know. I didn't have a leg to stand on because I was the druggie and all of that. So anyways, coming back to animal level, sorry, I was still on animal level, is that I slept on a mattress in this Nigerian's lounge. I was employed at the time, and he would I didn't have a phone for an alarm and things like that. Sometimes I would be able to have a phone. Pardon. I would be able to have a phone for a period of time and not sell it and get the next one and whatever. But most times this guy used to wake me up in the morning, and he would give me my fix then and things like that. And the weeks went on like that. And what happened was that because I didn't have an ID, I'm in another province, things like that. I can't get off to go to Home Affairs to get an ID. I have to keep going to work because that's my survival mode. I was basically just about on the streets, but completely on the streets in not a foreign province, but in a province where I know nobody, where help is more difficult to get and things like that. And one of the ladies that was working for him, because he was self-employed, and he employed ladies to stand on the road at night and make money for him and themselves and whatnot. And I would go on a Saturday morning to the bank and go and cash my check. And obviously at that time you could use anybody's ID to cash a cash check. And it became a way of survival, you know. But so my cash check would usually be finished by round about halfway through Monday if I got it on a Saturday, and then I would buy drugs on account, obviously, to keep going, to be able to function, to be able to go to work and all of that. And this guy, he fed me. He made sure that there was a plate of food for me every evening, and he made sure I had my little sleeping place there in the corner. But he also made sure that he'd give me drugs when I needed it, so that I wasn't going anywhere. Because that was my very source of life, in a way, at that time. Because without drugs, I couldn't work. And without work, I obviously couldn't survive. And without work, I couldn't drug. And it was quite a couple of kilometers from where I worked and things like that. And you know, that's just one of the times. And I want to ask this evening, you know, there's a couple of calls that we've gotten in the week. There's even somebody that we've booked in that you know, me as a parent, or I'll call it blood parent of a 15-year-old boy, Jordan. You know, I've never been completely distant and things like that. I've always been involved in some some extent and things like that. We do spend time together. I do have a lekker relationship and all of that. And sorry, I'm actually just trying to see the faces over there. Yeah, I went for eye test last week Saturday, and yeah, I had somebody on the phone at the time. But I managed to get my eyes tested, and where was I now, Justin? Are you listening?
You were getting your eyes by the traffic department, and
No, before that.
a man was giving you medication. Also, I saw.
Okay, yeah, so anyways, I was staying in Joburg, but you know how difficult. I can't imagine drugs going into one of my kids' bodies, and the places where I've been. I don't wish that upon anybody that has harmed me in any way. You know, don't you want to open the door a little bit there, Justin, please, man? You know, I've mentioned to my mom once or twice what's the difference between me and my 15-year-old son. And you know, yeah, my 15-year-old son Jordan, who's turning 16 this year, is that I can't imagine what it must be like for parents to, your son is so bad. Well, I can actually imagine now that you can't allow him in your house. You want to give him a place to sleep, or you don't want to deny him food. But you also don't want to help him kill himself. And you know, I had to say to the parent, because of my own experience, that when I'm in active addiction, I only need the clothes on my back and a possible place to sleep. And a little bit of food here and there in between. If I've got that, I'll keep dragging her. I will keep dragging. Addiction will tell me that I'm fine. The drugs will tell me that I'm fine. The drugs will make it comfortable enough for me to sleep and be in that situation. Maybe in the first couple of earlier years, there'll still be a little bit of you over there that can get up and say, I don't want to do this, and you'll do things in a way that makes your life better for a while. But eventually you don't have that get up in you anymore after falling the whole time. Because it's like physically falling, you know. If you keep on getting up and falling on your knees or injuring another part of you, eventually you can't get up anymore and you need help to get up from there. And I only know of I say addicts now. I only know of people with real substance abuse problems that have been in that situation, that have gotten help by others. You know, people phone me and ask me all the time, like when I say that we're quite full, or we in the Western Cape, or you know, when we're not in a financial state to fully sponsor people. And then they ask me for a rehab recommendation. You know, it is so difficult for me to give a rehab recommendation. Because I can't recommend something that hasn't worked for me. So, you know, like, obviously I've been through times in my life where I didn't think that that there was a way out of addiction anymore. I had given up. And just by somebody else's story of hope, like I said to you guys, the one night I seen Mr. Wall on CTV, and I hadn't been in contact with him for quite some time, obviously because of my behavior and things like that at the time. And this was in 2013. I hadn't been in contact with him from 2010 when I found him in prison, and I was still sort of holding resentments. When I phoned him and I asked him, is there a way that he can get me out of prison? And he said to me, are you sober? When I phoned him from prison, and I said yes. And then he said, oh well, then it seems to be working for you. But that was part of my lesson for not listening to him. But different things work for different people. You know, there might be a teenage lighty giving a mother a hard time at home this evening, and we tune throw him out. But he's been sitting in the room ticking and playing TV games for the last 6 years or 10 years or whatever. Hasn't worked a day in his life, so he goes out of the house even less. And we say kick him out. And this oak doesn't even know how to keep himself warm on the streets or anything like that. So there's different sort of answers for different people. But when they're acting breaker and they're breaking your stuff and they are threatening you and they are holding you hostage in your own home, go get an interdict. Otherwise, you're just allowing them to kill themselves slowly. If my dad didn't stop coming to court and bailing me out, I would have most probably still been going to court expecting him to bail me out. The only reason why I love consequences is because consequences is what saved my life. So I think, and I call out to the recovering addicts this evening, the people in recovery, to keep carrying the message of hope, to keep trying to uplift another human being. Because if one addict in recovery can carry the message successfully to just one more, it can double and double and double. The other ways aren't working. The other ways aren't working. To see families here on Saturday with light in their eyes, in a better situation, and when you see the difference compared to them when you book their loved one into the recovery center, then you know that something's working. We say it all the time that results count in recovery. And I think the responsible, productive, drug-free lives of so many of the people that have been through the program obviously illustrate the effectiveness of this program. I wouldn't have want to come to this program that Mr. Hall has developed and teached and passed on and tweaked according to the way the addiction has evolved and people have evolved and behaviors and traits of people have evolved. I wouldn't have wanted to come through this program if people weren't staying sober. Ultimately, we're looking for happiness without drugs. We're looking for peace without drugs. We're looking for the opposite of nervousness, anxiousness, and disharmony within ourselves. We're looking to be able to handle situations that used to confuse and baffle us, that used to keep us awake at night. And by working this program, we're rebuilding our fractured lives. My life was fractured, and it got more fractured, and it got broken through addiction. Because of the nature of addiction, it forces you into situations and do things that make your situation worse. You do things that cause pain. You feel the pain. You don't know how to deal with the pain. And then you take a painkiller. When the painkiller wears off, you take another painkiller. When you're ashamed and embarrassed of your actions, like being bailed out of prison, or getting yourself into a situation where you're in shit with the wrong people, rather put the pride in the pocket and save your own life and go and change it. You know, you get these arrogant people that says God helps those who help themselves. Yeah, I know for sure. But how must I get the robots help himself, man? Where's he got to turn to? I know what it's like to walk around with your ID in your pocket. First of all, you don't have clothes to go for an interview. Second of all, you can't go to a public bathroom and wash. Your confidence is down. Now, those of us that today are sitting with a drug problem, and I want people to remember this date. I think it's the 8th of September. We're 13 days away from World Addiction Day that was founded by RAEL. Because we know, because of the stigma, how much shit there is really because of addiction. We know. But maybe this evening or tomorrow morning when you're pulling out of your driveway, think to yourself, how many of those households have people in it that have substance abuse problems? I can tell you now, probably about 6 out of 10 of them on average. Some streets 4, some streets 9. But we're embarrassed about it. We think, how can this happen to me? And the people struggling with this problem, remember what I'm telling you today. Parents, remember what I'm telling you today. Recovering addicts, carry this message, please. Go give another man hope that was in your situation when you thought you couldn't recover. When you had a tug of war inside you that you weren't strong enough to pull, and you needed a recovering addict to guide you. Go carry this message. That if you don't stop your shit, you're not only going to land up in your mother's garage. If you don't pay the price of death, you're going to a psych ward, you're going to a hospital, you're going to an institution, or jail, and this is where you're going to end up. If there's any young people watching this evening and you maybe got parents or friends that are tucking a bit, smoking a bit of weed, being the cool kids at school, don't do what they're doing. listen to me this evening. And if they don't stop, remember my words, what I'm saying on the 8th of September 2020. They are going to institutions, jails, and some of them will die. And I beg of the recovering addicts to carry this message. I beg of the guys going to support group meetings to welcome the newcomer and identify with him where he's at. And tell him, you as well, when you walked into that meeting, that there was only a pinprick of light at the end of the tunnel because you've seen those people. And as those people walk with you, the way RAEL has walked with me and many other people, there becomes more pinpricks and the light gets brighter. And you get a little bit closer to the light and you get a glimpse and look through it and you think, hey, maybe this is possible. Because by the time I landed back at RAEL in 2014, it still took me about 10 months to be convinced. I was shit scared of myself because of what I had put myself through. And I didn't want to feel that pain or experience that pain again. And I knew that the only way to do that was not to use again in that. But then we forget where we come from once we get over that pain. I wanted to read something here. Okay, I can't remember the relevance of it. It was relevant at the time. But you know, you look at, you go to those pinpricks of light and you look through there and you start seeing a better life, a different way. It can never be an arrogance or a brag that I sit here sober tonight. There's many a times that I still sit and I skim and I think to myself, yes, bro, how did you get out of where you were? And that's why I call on the recovering addicts and people in recovery to carry the message. Because those are the people that got me out of where I was. That's all I want to do, is try and help a oak that was there where I was. To have parents here the other day and say, yo, I can't believe how well my son is behaving and carrying himself and speaking and all of that. Not the physical part. They notice the answers that they give, how respectful they've become, how much more confident they've gotten. I said to a lot of the parents here the weekend that if you don't hear from us, that is better than worse. Because if your son has got a good place to sleep, good people around him, 3 meals and extras and some luxuries a day, coffee, tea, nice warm shower, a bed to sleep in, and he hasn't got drugs in his body, well, then he's probably okay, you know. We need people to stand together to carry this message, man. I don't mind anybody going live on this live recovery stories that's got a message, that can carry a message, that can pass something on. Because that's part of my program, is the cliche, pass it on. Because I can only keep what I got by giving it away. If I stop working with addicts and alcoholics and carrying a message, I can't tell you what the outcome of that's going to be. But I'll come back to, in that state of being in an animal level, almost sometimes accepting that is what your life has become, and even possibly thinking at certain times that is the way it's going to stay. With nothing and no one around you. Not only because you've caused shit and you've stolen from them, but sometimes addicts also get to a point where they isolate because I just didn't want to hurt anybody anymore. Because of my addiction, anything that came close to me, I hurt, I destroyed. And eventually it was me and the drugs. More drugs than me, but, you know. So we have our lekker show that helps us to shed light on a lot of situations and things like that. And we speak about the insane things that we do, like tank driving down Povertystricken Road, not getting a prostitute, but playing with himself, riding up and down the road, and doing all sorts of things. But you know what? We, through our program, because we're doing something about it, and doing something, and because we don't have too much of a bad excuse, you know, we were dragged up. We're doing something to change that, man. Anybody can ask me about any situation here on the show. What I stole, how much I sold it for, how did I get in, who I stole it from. That's very good, Gary. I like that. And who I got back, what hurt me, why I acted in a certain way. I can look the world in the eye and say that I slept on a mattress in a Nigerian's, I don't know if it was his lounge, or just part of his house, or if that was his house, I can't remember so well. I know it was only that little area and like 3 divided rooms. I've broken into houses. I've broken into shops. I've stolen amongst most people and places that I've been. Especially my parents. The people closest to me, like Mal. I stole all her stuff. Even her clothes. And I sold it. In the earlier years, before I had bad debt, I don't have bad debt anymore. But there was a stage that I had very bad debt. But before that, I mean, we heard that I stole people's credit cards. You know, before they had the PIN, you just used to put the CCD in. I stole people's credit cards. I stole people's rims off their cars. I stole people's gate motors. Used to look where they're busy building, like granny flats and all of that. I used to go and steal the wires out of where they've just cemented it. Used to lie to people about what I needed money for. I stole from most jobs and places that I worked at. The only reason why I don't go into detail live is because you might get some idiot that would try and make life difficult for me. And I bet you that idiot that does something like that, yes, Garth, gas cylinders, laptops, hey, I tell you, anything that was sellable, and most things are made sellable. I broke people's brass taps off the outside of their house and left their water shooting up in the air, so I could have a piece of scrap to put on the scale. Stole sentimental things from people. You know how many calls we get? You know how many calls we get from parents and their wedding rings have been stolen or missing? I sold one of the cars I owned twice. And I'm doing something about it. I'm trying to make amends. I can't reach as far and wide as what I'd like to. I'd probably never be able to afford to pay back everybody that I stole from. But I try and give back in other ways. And because I can sit here and you can ask me anything about anything, I know Mr. Hall mentions the Undertaker sometimes. I think that one of the only things I didn't do was sell my body or sleep with a man. And I can tell you now, the only reason I didn't stand at the robots is because of pride and because I didn't like to wait. For somebody to give me money. I would rather go and steal and make a plan and manipulate and con and threaten and all those things that go along with addiction. There was even times that I moved in by people. There's even times that I got chances to move back home where I was convinced that if I had to take a lie detector test at the time, when I was promising the people that I was moving in by, that I'm done and I'm not doing it anymore, and that I won't steal from them and I won't do it again. If I had to take a lie detector test, oh, that's quite a compliment, Gary. If I had to take a lie detector test, sorry, I smoke a lot during these meetings, that the lie detector test would have been on my side at that time because I believed myself. Because I suffer from an illness that tells me I don't have an illness. I suffer from an illness that tells me I can handle it. I suffer from an illness that when things get better, I think I don't need to go back to the basics. I suffer from an illness that if I don't practice the principles in all my affairs and work with other addicts, I become selfish again, because it's selfish and self-centered, this illness. It doesn't care about your mother or your sister or your brother or your loved ones. And it cares less about you. So if I can just reach a person that it can change their life, and we have reached people. I know there's a guy in East London that just through these meetings is 6 months sober. Only because there's people that can identify with him. And he doesn't feel like a black sheep or another species. So I want to thank RAEL for carrying the message the way you do. I want to thank Mr. Hall for speaking the language that I understand as an addict. I want to thank Mr. Hall for the consequences and the limitations and managing my life in this program that does everything for me. All I need to do is listen. And then the results will come. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Every single desire of my heart will come. Very nice day today in Cape Town, I must say. Parents, test your kids. And I'm going to end off with rebellion. Many of us have lived our entire lives in revolt. Our initial response to any type of direction is often negative. Automatic rejection of authority seems to be a troubling character defect for many addicts. A thorough self-examination can show us how we react to the world around us. I don't give anybody my key anymore that gossips about me. I don't give anybody my key that looks down on me. I can look the world in the eye because I've got nothing to hide. Besides the people that I stole from, I owe nobody nothing. And the one that's judging, can you admit your faults and problems to the world? Remember, God came for the sinner, not the saint. A thorough self-examination can show us how we react to the world around us. And I ask all these people to, everybody, all kinds of people, every human being. We can ask ourselves if our rebellion against people, places, and institutions is justified. If we keep writing long enough, we can usually get past what others did and uncover our own part in our affairs. We find that what others did to us was not as important as how we responded to the situations we found ourselves in. Regular inventory allows us to examine the patterns in our reactions to life and see if we are prone to chronic rebelliousness. Oof. I think I was born with rebelliousness. I enjoyed some of it though. I was cack naughty. Yes, see. Sometimes we find that while we may usually go along with what is suggested to us rather than risk rejection, we secretly harbor resentments against authority. I can tell you now, the oaks watching here tonight, Gladwin, Garth, Clutchy, Jared, a couple of the other people, even Tank that's sitting here, didn't like me every day. But if you listen, you'll like the result that you'll get. If left to themselves, these resentments can lead us away from our program of recovery. And loved ones and family members of addicts and people that have wronged them, you harbor that resentment, it's keeping you from recovery. Not recovery from drugs. We don't recover from drugs. When we put the drugs down, we recover from the drugs. In recovery, we recover from all the hurts, hang-ups, and people and places and actions and things that we've been through. The people that took us for a gat. The people that stole from us. The people that we stole from that caused shame in us, shame and guilt. The embarrassment we caused ourselves and our families. That's what we recover from. And we learn ways of living over here so that we don't need to repeat that and go through it over and over and over again. Because if we don't change that, we're going to pick the drugs up again. The inventory process allows us to uncover, evaluate, and alter our rebellious patterns. Now, rebellious patterns means all kinds of things like forgive and forget. We all know that that's the answer to resentments and whatnot. But go lay on your pillow tonight and see if you can forgive and forget, man. Easy to tell addicts and whatever, you must come right, you must stop doing this, you must stop doing that. It's intense work in a program of recovery. It's not for pussies, man. You need to be taught how to handle your feelings. You need to be taught how not to lose your shit when a oak drives shit in front of you or calls you a name or steals from you. You need to be taught how to deal with a loss of a loved one or a breakup or something not turning out the way you want it to turn out. Or sometimes you even need to learn how to deal with coming out of the shop or out of a movie and the rims of your car is gone. That's what we're learning to do here, man. You need to love thy neighbor. That is what we need to learn to do here. You need to learn how to carry the message. You need to learn how to not forget where you come from. And we need to learn how to have empathy and be passionate about something. Not get well and get what we want and then break down on our way, because then we haven't lost the selfishness. And I've seen that work. I see it work in Mr. Hall. I see it work in the other guys that are here sober. And I see it work in the people that's been through the program. Richie sent me a message earlier. He said, "Hey, how's it, my bro? I haven't heard from you in a while." I said to him, "Hey, Richie, lekker, my bro. Thanks for thinking of me." You see, I can't make peace or have peace or be selfless when I'm only thinking of me, myself, and I. Because remember, addiction and alcoholism and substance abuse problems, the core of it is selfish and it wants what it wants. Because that's the nature of addiction. And I've seen it work for Mr. Hall, the way 18 hours a day, sometimes more, especially in summer. Hey, Tang?
Yeah.
Just gives and gives and gives and gives and gives of himself. That's why I call on the people in recovery to carry this message. Go back to basics. Don't forget where you come from. And always remember that we can't change the world, but we can change ourselves and the way we react to what's happening in the world. And being over here, I've been taught by not lip service. It's easy to say forgive and forget. It's easy to say love thy neighbor. But I've been taught that through actions. I've been taught that through seeing another human being do that. And if you see one human being doing that, that teaches another human being to do that, and those two human beings are being seen by another two human beings, and they take to that way of life, and it's not do as I do as I say shit. But rather, not practice what you preach, but rather preach what you practice, man. Rather say what you do and carry the message. Then maybe we can get the message out there. So all fair and well, lekker, we'll have another episode of Crackers and Crackheads coming up shortly. Mr. Wall is the cracker, and I'm the crackhead that's been cracked and restored. I have a full set of feelings, and I'm not too bad at handling whichever one comes my way, because I've been taught very well, and I can handle situations that used to baffle me. As long as I do my program, addiction will never get too cunning for me, as long as I remember where I come from. And Crackers and Crackheads, nice, light-hearted, and we always said we wanted to start a reality show. And today we can joke and laugh and take it from where it comes when we speak about our things. But it's just another angle at carrying the message, eh? Because I can tell you now that a year and a half ago, when Tang, for example, was sitting there by himself, scheming, oh my goodness, I must be some kind of freak, driving down Povertystricken Road and doing what I do, or Carl making his TikTok videos, sometimes in his sane mind, scheming, oh my goodness, what have I done? I tell you now that there's many people out there tonight doing exactly the same thing. And by us admitting this and laughing about it can maybe make that person think and feel, okay, there's more like me in the world. But look how they've changed. So we'll keep you posted about crackers and crackheads. Because in a lot of recovery centers tonight, there's more crackers than crackheads. But like we said, everybody needs love. And it says in the big book that there are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. But they too can recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Thank you for being with us tonight on RAEL Live Recovery Stories. It's awesome checking our audience. Sorry I didn't check too much of the comments tonight because there's parts of me that's been cracked that hasn't been restored yet. And I sort of lose my train of thought when I try and read that and try and stay where I'm at and all of that. So sometimes I try not to let anything stray me from the path that I'm on when it's a good one. And I hope in some way that I've helped somebody tonight. Parents, test your kids. That should be a non-negotiable. Parents, test your kids. Parents, take your homes back. And to the oak in the mattress in his mother's garage, or the floor in the lounge, or to the households where you have to lock everything away, there's help out there. You don't need to live like that. There's answers nowadays to addiction. That's where I come from. And the locks of the chains of addiction that was inside of me have been unlocked, and I'm free because of this program. Thank you very much. Thank you, RAEL. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for founding RAEL. Thank you for the hours that you spend and invest in people. Thank you to people that, like the doctor that walks alongside us, that gives of herself so selflessly. And everybody else that supports us in any kind of way. Whether it's sharing posts, whether it's telling people that there is people that care and that were also addicts that are now recovered. Excuse me. Whether it's parents that come here and help people that aren't wanted maybe yet by their parents, but it will get there. When we do our program, the bad parts of us automatically slip away. But when we try and fight with everything, it almost doesn't happen for us. So thank you, Mr. Hall, for RAEL and the organization. I'd like to see, maybe this week, not just an orange ribbon, but maybe a little bit of orange lipstick, or orange t-shirt, and maybe surprise us maybe with your orange photos as we get closer to World Addiction Day, that was also founded by Mr. Hall. There's also World Day of Prayer for Addicts, because that is ultimately what works. Most of the guys sitting here this evening sober are a result of a mother or parents or somebody's prayer. Thank you very much. Please share after this. You don't have to put my name there. I don't want you to spread my name. I want you to carry the message that somebody like me that used to beg, borrow, steal, manipulate, and cause shit, and there's many of them out there, can change. Thank you very much. God bless you.